Hello again, everyone. I am Chris Dugan, sports editor at the Observer Reporter. You're watching the OR Sports High School Football Weekly Roundup. With me again this week, assistant sports editor Joe Tuscano. Joe, it's getting a little colder at night, starting to feel like football season, maybe playoff football season. We have several teams that have already clinched playoff berths. 5, in fact. Belle Vernon in 4A. Chartiers-Houston, Washington, and Burgettstown are in Double-A out of the Century Conference. Carmichael's is clinched in the Class A Tri-County South. There's a few other teams that will move into the playoff category this week. We have 2 teams that are undefeated in the local area that have not secured playoff berths yet. One is Fort Cherry, and that's where we are this week at Fort Cherry High School. Jim Gary Stadium is behind me where the undefeated Rangers play. The other team is South Fayette in the 4A Northwest 9 Conference. And Joe, you saw them play last week against Newcastle. The Lions looked pretty good, especially in the second half.
They did. It was a heartbreaking game for me to watch because they beat up on my alma mater, Newcastle. And if you looked at the picks in our paper that week, I took Newcastle because my mom wouldn't talk to me if I would have taken South Fayette. But no, they showed themselves to be a champion caliber football team. Even though they had, a steady rain, they threw the ball pretty well. They when they needed to, they didn't throw it a lot, but when they needed to, they hit some big passes. And they gave the ball to Giovanni Love, who had the best game of anybody in South Fayette history. He ran for 308 yards and scored 4 touchdowns. It's the first time anybody's been over 300 yards as a running back in South Fayette, because they've had such great quarterbacks over the years.
They throw the ball so often.
They throw it over so well, but that was a night that they showed off their muscles in running the football, and they just really beat Newcastle in every which way.
South Fayette won that game 37-13 to remain undefeated. Giovanni Love, 39 carries in that game. I guess Love found a way to get it done. Let's talk about some other games from last week. I think the team that had the best win last week of all the local winners was Peters Township. The Indians win over a very good Pine Richland team. TJ Kappen, the tailback at Peters Township, rushed for 128 yards. He scored 4 touchdowns in that 32-27 win. That was a game that was going back and forth. They were trading the lead. Peters Township wins it. That could be the momentum that Peters Township needs to make a final push to get a playoff spot in 6A.
Yeah, and they caught a break, and the quarterback, Phil Jerkovic, I believe broke his hand.
He had a thumb injury. He had surgery on it last week.
He's out for the rest of the season, and he's a commit to Notre Dame University, and their backup was not Phil Jerkovic, so... that was a good break, but hey, you need good breaks in the season to get into the playoffs. It really
wasn't the Pine Richland offense that sputtered. It was Pine Richland's defense couldn't stop Peters Township. That was a good win for the Indians. Pine Richland has 3 losses now this year. The other 2 were the Central Catholic and Cleveland St. Edward. That's pretty good company for Peters Township.
That's great company.
Another team that had a big win last week was Cannon-McMillan. Wins 43-7 over winless Shaler. Now, why is that a big win, Joe?
Why is it a big win?
For Cannon-McMillan, why is that a big win?
Because it's the second in a row, and they've only done that since 2008.
First time since 2008, the Big Macs have won 2 games in a row, and they dominated that game, scored the first 43 points. Defense for the Big Macs intercepted 6 passes. Drew Engel had 3 interceptions in that game. Jordan Castelli passed for 324 yards and 3 touchdowns. Mike Evans, the coach at Cannon Mac, was telling me before the season, he said, watch out for Jordan Castelli. He's a good quarterback. He's going to do big things. And he's lived up to those expectations. He's played very well this year. Brian Milligan, healthy again, ran for 191 yards, scored 3 touchdowns. Good game coming up, not this Friday, but next week, Peters Township and Cannon-McMillan.
I'd like to be there, and that's going to be Peters Township. It's no secret how they're going to stop Cannon Mac. They've got to stop the passing game, and if they can do that, if they can keep Castelli on their wraps, they'll have an opportunity to win that game.
Now, Brian Milligan, we mentioned him from Cannon-McMillan. 2 weekends ago, he carried the ball 49 times in an overtime win against Altoona. We mentioned Giovanni Love, 39 carries last weekend. TJ Capon, 36 carries last weekend. That's a lot of carries for these guys, but nobody has carried the ball more locally this season than Dylan Rush at Mapletown. He's had several games of over 40 carries. And last weekend, he scored the game-winning touchdown for Mapletown in an overtime win against Jefferson, Morgan. It was 26-20. He scored on a 10-yard run on the first play of the second possession of overtime. But earlier in that game, he became the 69th player in Whitfield history that surpassed 4,000 career rushing yards.
And he's also become the 5th player in Greene County history to reach that mark. And the trivia question I have for you right now is, who is the leading rusher all time in Greene County history? And I'll tell you that when we get a little bit deeper into our show here.
I think I know the answer to this one.
I do too, because I have it right here.
Dylan Rush, 4,079 career yards. He will take that total into this stadium Friday night when Mapletown plays at undefeated Fort Cherry. This year, Dylan Rush has 1,633 yards. Here's a couple interesting statistics for Mapletown and how much Dylan Rush is involved in their offense. He's touched the ball in 74% of Mapletown's offensive plays, either running it, throwing it, or catching it. And he's accounted for 87% of the team's total offense.
That's more work than I do in a week. And for Fort Cherry, the big plus to this team is Ryan Culverson, who started his career at Fort Cherry
started at Fort Cherry, went to South Fayette, and now is back.
And
the common thread, though, with him, he's been very good no matter where he's played.
He has. He's a fantastic player. He has over 1,000 total yards, almost 700 rushing, and he's coming up on 500 passing. And he can catch the ball, he can run the ball, he can play just about any skill position on offense. And I imagine if they asked him to center the ball, he could give it a go and probably be very good at that.
Now, Fort Cherry will put that 6-0 record on the line Friday night against Mapletown here at Jim Gary Stadium. Joe had a chance to talk with Jim Shiel, the head coach of the Rangers, about that game and the season so far for Fort Cherry.
Hi, I'm Joe Tuscano, and I'm with Fort Cherry head football coach Jim Shiel. Jim has a big game this week with Mapletown. And Jim, can you talk a little bit about the progression of this season and how you thought it would turn out? And did you expect to be undefeated at this point?
I hope to be undefeated at this point. We knew going in that we had quite a bit of experience coming back in the skilled positions, receivers, running backs. We knew we were going to be young on the line. We graduated 5 offensive linemen from the previous year. But the guys that we brought in, I had a lot of confidence that, as the season wore on, they would get better and better, which they have. And it seems like each week they get a little bit better. And we knew also our first 4 games were going to be brutal, and we made it through that stretch, and I'm feeling pretty good about things right now.
You're 6-0, and I believe that matches the win total of your last 2 seasons combined, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Did you see this group coming through? Did you think that this would be an opportunity to, have a real good year with this group?
Yeah, I felt good about the year coming in. I really was confident in the kids we had, coming back, and some of the ones we had coming up. We've had a couple nice junior high years, and so we knew we had some talent coming up too. So I felt pretty good about it, and really I felt like we underachieved the previous year. But we had a couple injuries early in the season that hurt us, and then a couple other setbacks. I felt like we could have been a playoff team last year, and it just didn't work out.
Mm-hmm. And you had the addition of Ryan Culverson this year, and he's been somebody that must have had a lot of fun scheming plays with, because I've seen that he runs the ball, he throws the ball, he catches the ball, and I understand he sells popcorn at halftime. Is that true?
Well, by everything but. But I found out that he was going to be coming here. He actually went to school here in elementary school through 7th grade before he moved away, and I don't think the family ever really wanted to move. But every year up till this year, all the kids, all his friends would say, "Oh, they're moving back. They're moving back." His older brother played for me when I coached the junior high race on, and you know, every year they tell me that, and I just say, guys, I'll believe it when I see it. And you know, he shows up this year.
Well, his presence allows you to do a lot of other things with your kids. Can you talk a little bit about that dynamic to the team?
Well, when he was here before, he actually played quarterback through our youth system and on the middle school team here in 7th grade. Now, I know when he went to South Fayette, they have an abundance of quarterbacks there. They felt that
pretty good ones.
He would be better served as a receiver. I think he played tight end last year, and I think he might have been their leading receiver. He's a special athlete. He's got a ton of ability, and we can put him all over the field, and that's kind of what we do. You know, my outlook going into this is, you know, he can play quarterback, he can throw, he can run, he can catch, but if we would have split him out, how many times a game would he touch the football? Mm-hmm. Maybe 5 to 10 times tops. So by having him at quarterback, he's touching the football every play. And every time he touches the football, he's a threat to break a big play.
Jim, and you have an offensive line that's young but growing. Is there anybody on that offensive line that's kind of caught your attention or maybe caught you by surprise?
Well, we knew we had a kid that started last year, and he was injured the second game of the season, so he didn't play much. But we knew as long as he came back healthy, he would be solid. And that's Josh Coomer. And the rest of the line is inexperienced. We took a tight end from last year's team and moved him to tackle, and he's exceeded expectations. He's played very well. We have a freshman starting on the offensive line. Started the year at center. We've kind of moved him to guard. He and Coomer switch off and on depending on the defense we face. Coomer's a much larger guy, so if we face a 5-man front or an odd front, then he'll play center. And then Brennan Smith, the young freshman, will play center if we face a 4-man front. We have a sophomore that plays, Brennan Shiel. We have Alex Nemec, and he's doing very well. And then we have another junior, Jacob Baird. He's doing really well also. We expected him to do pretty well. He was a first-year player last year as a sophomore, and by the end of the season, we felt like he would definitely be somebody that would step up in there and fill some big shoes for that group of seniors we lost last year.
Now you've got Mapletown coming in, and obviously the Dylan Rush has been making headlines with the 4,000 yards rushing. What kind of a running back is he, and how do you stop him?
Well, he's quick. He runs really hard. He doesn't need a whole lot of space. You just give him a small crack to run through. He gets through there and he just explodes. He's very explosive, and feet never stop churning. He's always moving. We know it's going to be a challenge to stop him. Maybe I shouldn't say stop, but contain. Yeah, contain him.
And then a week from now, we have a game with Carmichael's coming up. And I know you're not looking ahead, but I'm sure you've got that in the back of your mind that it's going to be an interesting 2 weeks you got here with Mapletown and then Carmichael. Mapletown a non-section game, and Carmichael, or I'm sorry, section game. Section game, yeah. And Carmichael's of course undefeated in the section, and it's hard to keep that from thinking about that game by any chance.
Well, we always focus one at a time, and if you get caught looking past one opponent that can jump up to bite you. I've seen Carmichael's. Most of the films we get to scout, they're playing common opponents as we are, and they're very good. Mm-hmm. They're very good. So I'm looking forward to that a week from now to the challenge. It's definitely going to be a dogfight, but we got to get past Mapletown first.
That's right. And it will be playing Friday night, and we want to thank Jim Shiel for coming and having a few minutes with us to talk
Glad
about
to.
the game, and wish you good luck.
Thank you.
I'd also like to thank Jim Shiel for spending some time with us and talking about his team's season. Joe, you had a trivia question before the interview. Who's the all-time leading rusher in Greene County High School football?
Well,
I'm going to take a guess here, see if I'm right. I'm going to say Rodney Wilson of West Greene.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you who it's not. It's not Lanfer Simpson, who has 4,010 yards, and he did that after the 2000 season. It's not Rocky Doman, who has 4,145 yards, and he got that after the 99 season. And it was not Derek Bona, who has 4,793 yards, and he got that after the 89 season. You get the prize, a 2-week stay at Jim Gary Stadium.
You're going to send me to Rogersville.
No, I could. Well, that's not a bad place to go either. But Rodney Wilson has 6,304 yards, and he did that after the 93 season. And I'd say Rush has an opportunity to do that, unless, of course, injury or something unusual happens. He has a shot.
Yeah, Dylan Rush is only a junior.
He's only a junior, so he'd need about an 1,800-yard senior season to do that.
Now, Joe, we have some games this week that have conference championship implications, playoff implications. This is a game a weekend that a lot of people have been pointing to, because in the Century Conference you have undefeated Washington playing Chartiers-Houston, and Chartiers-Houston's a half a game ahead of Wash High in the conference. The Bucks are unbeaten in the conference. They do have one loss overall. That's the game of the week.
That is the game of the week, and Terry Fetzko's done such a good job with that team there. They've gotten some fortunate things have happened to them. The missed field goal by Burgettstown at the end of the game got them one win, but for the most part, I think he's taken a group that a lot of people thought were good and made them better. Now, whether or not they can stay with the speed and size of Wash High, that's another question, but I wouldn't bet against them.
Well, you got to like the fact that the Bucks are playing at home, but last week in the rain, Chartiers-Houston played at Charleroi and won 14-6 and did not score an offensive touchdown. The Bucks scored 2 touchdowns on interception returns. A.J. Myers ran one back. Spencer Turling ran one back. Bucks almost had 3 interception returns for touchdowns. They dropped one that might have gone for a score. They need more offense than 67 yards to beat Wash High, that's for sure, even though Chartiers-Houston's playing pretty good defensively.
And for how bad the weather was, that's probably an anomaly, because the rain is a good equalizer, and anybody that watched the Notre Dame game over the weekend can tell you that on a dry field they probably beat North Carolina State pretty handily, but they ended up losing.
Well, if you saw that North Carolina State Notre Dame game that you were talking about, you could probably envision what the field was like at Bentworth last week. A lot of people have made that comparison between the two. It was a quagmire. Wash High trailed Bentworth at halftime and then dominated in the second half, pulled away and won. Lyle Webb ran for 137 yards and 3 touchdowns for the Prexies in that game. What I really like about Wash High is their defense and their punt return unit. Defense this year, no opponent has rushed for 90 yards against the Little Prexies. They're giving up only an average of 39 rushing yards a game.
Yeah, and that's because they're just talented all the way through that lineup, and especially the size. The further you go up in classification, the easier it is to find bigger linemen. But they just have such size; they dominate the line of scrimmage, and that's what Chartiers-Houston is going to have to deal with to be successful.
Also, like the punt return unit for Wash High, if you throw out the fourth quarter of Wash High's game against Stowe Rocks, when Stowe Rocks scored a lot of points against the third and fourth team guys, if you throw that quarter out, Wash High's punt return unit has scored more points than the opponent's offense has this year. They're blocking punts that lead to touchdowns or safeties. They've returned 2 punts for touchdowns this year. Watch that unit in this game. If I'm Chartiers-Houston, I'm definitely thinking about kicking the ball out of bounds any chance I get. Another big game, though, this week, Joe, in the Big 9 Conference, you have Belle Vernon, which is 6-0, leads the conference, playing at Thomas Jefferson, which is 5-0 in the conference, 6-0 overall. whoever wins that is going to win the Big Nine Conference. You would think, although West Mifflin's still out there.
West Mifflin's still in there. They're undefeated as well, 5-0 in the conference and 7-0 overall. And this game might only take about an hour and 45 minutes to play because these are two teams that run the football. The last 10 games that they've played against each other, Belle Vernon's only won one, and that was last year.
But that was a big one. Belle Vernon overcame a 24-7 halftime deficit, wins the game in overtime. Now, that was stunning because it sent TJ to an 0-2 start.
Right.
But another reason it was stunning, TJ in their last 64 home games, they're 63-1.
Yeah.
The one loss was the Belle Vernon last year, so this is revenge weekend for Thomas Jefferson. TJ comes in on a roll. They've beaten every opponent by at least 41 points this year. They're averaging 54 points a game. Here's my favorite stat of the season. Zane Zander, running back for Thomas Jefferson, he's their leading rusher. He averages 25.8 yards a carry.
That's pretty good. That's going to lead the WPIL. I'm just taking a guess at that, but that's pretty good. And Belle Vernon was kind of had a little setback 2 weeks ago when Derek Savosky had tore his ACL, I believe, and partially tore his MCL and was lost for the season. And Nick Hall's come in, and he's only averaging a mere 10.6 yards per carry. So, you know, that doesn't measure up to TJ's.
Well, one thing Belle Vernon has going for it is the Leopards can play defense. They committed 5 turnovers last week at Trinity, but the defense held. Trinity only cashed in on one of those 5 turnovers. Belle Vernon intercepted a pass, ran it back for a touchdown, and they win 21-15 at Hiller Field.
Yeah, and you know, Belle Vernon and TJ have shown you that running the football and playing strong defense is the way to win in high school. I know that spread offenses in the passing game, you know, are popular, but you know, with the talent, you know, Mike Fine, a quarterback with Belle Vernon, I mean, he just runs that ball well, and their defense just creates opportunities in the red zone, turnovers, and that's what they're going to need to beat TJ. If not, they might suffer their first loss of the season.
Another big game in the Big Nine Conference, Ringgold, which has 2 losses, fighting for a playoff spot, plays at West Mifflin. West Mifflin has kind of been flying under the radar. You know, everybody talks about Belle Vernon and Thomas Jefferson, but West Mifflin's undefeated. West Mifflin 5-0 in the conference, 7-0 overall. They'll be hosting the Rams of Ringgold this week. That's a big game.
And Brennan Small coming back to 100%. He missed, I believe it was 2 games or 1.5 games within injury, and they're going to need him to have a big game and Martin to throw the ball, George Martin, their quarterback, to throw the ball in order to win.
One other game I want to mention this week is a Tri-County South game. Carmichael's will be hosting Jefferson Morgan. That is either, depending on where you're finding your series records, it's either game 91 or 92 in that series. They've played a lot of times, and they're playing this week at Parker Field. Carmichael's leads the Tri-County South by a half game over Fort Cherry. Till next week, enjoy the games.